So, like ancient Greece, modern Italy has ample access to the sea. It's got gorgeous mountainous terrain, but it also deals with soil erosion and polluted freshwater. As we will see, their weaknesses are in their strengths and vice versa. Next slide. So first, let's talk about the cons.
Did I go the wrong way? Sorry.
Oh, go back one.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to go back with it being easy. So 15?
Yes.
Is that where we are?
Yep. That's it.
Okay. Sorry about that.
So here are some of the cons to consider. I boiled it down to 3 bullet points. Take a moment to look at those. Next slide. So hydrological instability is a key factor. On the left side, we see that the areas that are flood prone in blue. You'll particularly notice the Po River Valley. It's the center of most Italian industry as well as the agricultural heartland. There are more than 16 million people that live there, nearly 1/3 of all Italians. And they've got 12 cities with populations surpassing 100,000, including 2 that surpass 1 million. Next to that image in red, you see some of the landslide and erosion prone areas. The center track that sticks out visually is the Appennino Mountain Range, and it's home to thousands of small villages and towns. According to a 2010 paper, landslides and floods created about 680,000 homeless and evacuees between 1950 and 2008. So they're significant. Next slide. The next thing I wanted to talk about is earthquakes. On the right, we can see a map of Italy's earthquakes and their intensities. It finds itself at the conversion of the African and Eurasian plates, which is a huge seismological risk. According to researchers at the Liceo Maggiorana, on the orange pie chart you'll see, earthquakes were responsible for 82% of deaths from natural disasters between 1900 and 2016. Next slide.
2-minute warning.
Yep. A few notes about water quality. Several Italian cities are in breach of EU wastewater treatment standards, and they have a number of infringement cases going on. In the Environmental Implementation Review of 2019, Italy shows a lot of unknowns for their quality of surface waters. You can see that on the left. It also ranks high in its proportion of artificial land cover, which is also on the right. This, in addition to high industrial and agricultural effluents getting into the river, results in poor water quality. Next slide. But Italy also has some pros. Take a couple seconds to let those sink in. Next slide. So,
sorry.
First, Italy is an incredibly diverse land. On the left, you'll see there are differences in elevation, climate, precipitation, and morphology. These make way for a great array of vegetation. To the right, you can see the forested land. That's about 10.5 million hectares, or 1/3 of their national land. Next slide. To get an idea of their potential for vegetative diversity, check out this amazing map. This is called ecosystem mapping for the implementation of the European biodiversity strategy at the national level, Italy's case, and it was done by Sapienza University of Rome. But this gives you an idea of what sort of green infrastructure they could utilize as defense against natural disasters. Next slide. Finally, let's not forget about the 4,700 miles of Italy's coastline. As you can see from the graphic, they're importing 78% of their marine goods. Should they decide to source food more locally and create local jobs, World Wildlife Fund has created this report. This came from that report, and gives detailed recommendations on sustainable fisheries, sustainable aquaculture, and even a sustainable seafood guide. Next slide. So, Italy may be similar to ancient Greece, but it can do things differently. From many examples of collapse, Italy's decision makers know that the importance of forests have in fighting against flooding, erosion, and even disease. These are critical to the water cycle. And as you've seen from these visuals, Italians have ample data they can use to predict and model different scenarios and save lives. Information is readily available about best engineering practices, how and where to build, for example. So they have the financial incentives and penalties from the EU to get better water quality. I'd say, let's go. So that's what I had on the environment.